Welcome everybody. As we've just heard, this is the final session, so we'll keep this brief, to the point, concise, and go through the slides. We have about 20 slides here, so we'll be talking for about 20 minutes. We'll have 10 minutes of follow-up Q&A at the end. So essentially, what are we here for in the session? So essentially, we are, again, talking about digital products, and we're talking about Lifescience Dynamics digital products. We've heard a lot about those today, and like many organizations, probably reflective of your organization as well, there are initiatives ongoing to enhance the organizational capacity, efficiency, speed, and many other attributes. So we'll just be running through 3 of these products today. You'll notice there's 4 products up there. We'll have time to discuss 3 of them. And then if anyone wants further information on the 4th, very happy to share that in coming days. So without further ado, agenda, the 3 products we're going to be talking about are Dynamics View, Tracker, and Planner. Dynamics View is concerning the big data area. Tracker is, from the sound of it, you probably understand it's a clinical trials related digital tool. And Planner is targeted towards conferences and efficiency around conference utilization. So just a brief introduction about myself and a co-speaker here. So firstly, myself, I'm head of the consulting practice at Lifescience Dynamics. My background is quite diverse. I've spent some time in market research at Eli Lilly, in finance at Eli Lilly with regard to the clinical trials activity. I've also spent quite a lot of time in a pioneering disruptive technology business called Applied Biosystems, quite a long time ago, but nonetheless, quite an interesting role. And then subsequently, I've been working as a life science sector leader in a division of some of the big 4 accounting firms who are very active, as you know, in the sector. Moving on to my colleague, co-presenter, he'll be coming forward to talk about 2 of the tools. So Dr. Hussein Jafar. So basically, he's got a wealth of experience in molecular biology and biochemistry. He's been pivotal to our digital tools development, and also from a forward-looking perspective, he's looking to develop the tools even more. And so essentially, that's the background to ourselves, briefly. So I know Raquel gave you if you were part of the initial discussion that Raquel led about 11 o'clock today, you've heard about Life Science Dynamics and the role we play in the consulting area around strategic decision support in those 3 main silos: market research, CI, and market access. I won't dwell on those other than to say, clearly, like any organization, we have designed a number of digital tools that primarily act to support our own business, but also they facilitate broader interaction with our clients. And as we move forwards, we're finding there's demand pull with our clients in a variety of places, but particularly in competitive intelligence, where there's a bit of a sweet spot where these tools are centered. So what's the real motivation here for Life Science Dynamics to get involved? And I guess it goes back and quite a number of years ago, and I think Hussein was part of the original team here, that we saw that people are getting busier, there's just more to do, scarce resource, lots of data, lots of processes that need to occur. And over time, we could see things where we needed to increase speed, increase efficiency, save cost. It's very simple in a nutshell. So essentially, we decided to put some investment into these tool areas, and with a view to not only understanding the implications with our own business, but also end-to-end through to our clients, to try and understand the extent of the problem and how we could address that. So in terms of the themes around the activity behind the motivation there within the tool development area is one to try and enhance the quality, speed, and value, and reduce cost of certain processes. We've very much put in place an end-to-end mentality, philosophy, and there's also a continuous improvement theme there running through these tools. So before we leave this and turn to the first tool, I just want to emphasize that actually, although they are generally giving higher performance in speed terms and efficiency, effectiveness, the key thing for me is the hidden aspect and benefit of these tools is they're actually helping us to improve the quality and the fitness for purpose of the data, because we've heard that from a number of people today. Clearly, there's a potential to use data in the wrong way, make slightly wrong decisions, or take the wrong course. So it's necessary to have a certain amount of diligence and cleaning of data, especially when you're talking about some of these important CI data flows into and through clients. So moving on to the first tool, Dynamics View. So this is our big data digital tool. Essentially, it's a tool that allows both single users and multi-users access to certain amounts of analytical data, and it brings together various disparate sources of data, either from audits or Biomed Tracker, or it could be from internal data, for example, on Salesforce activities, digital promotional aspects. So what this tool does is it uses a bit of an engine, brings the data together, and it presents it into one channel, an ease of use channel, which is highly visual. It's based on, this is a schematic here of how the data flow is structured. So we have a variety of data repositories on the left, and moving to the right, we actually have an engine in place which runs on Tableau. You might be familiar with Tableau as a business enterprise and intelligence system, but it allows you to cross-interact with data. It mines the data that you want to see, brings it forward into some clever graphics, and it's ultimately can be used in a very bespoke fashion. So what we've added to this is a front-end portal interface, which is one channel, so that you can have multiple versions of different types of data presented in a consistent format through a multi-user access potential route. So what does Dynamics View offer? So essentially, it is a dashboard-based system. It's bespoke. It's highly visual and interactive, and it can be shared through line management. And the nice thing is, because it's quite an easy-to-use tool, it can be a platform for knowledge sharing and things of that nature. Just want to highlight, like any of these tools, and we've heard that a number of times today, there are limitations to it. There are drawbacks. It's not an all panacea of all benefits and no investment. And clearly, one of those is the time effort is needed with the users or user to decide how they want to use the tool, what data slice and dice they want to have through there. And where you have a multi-user scenario, like one of the examples we'll share with you very shortly is with a user set of more than 100 people downstream that have been using this for probably about 2 years, something like that, through various iterations. So there are other things to think about around practically adopting this, but the way we position this really is to help organizations with getting to one version of the truth in a comfortable setting, such that users can interact and all have a gold standard on which to base certain decisions. So quite a busy slide this, but it's really just trying to help you understand that. For an example, this is really a little mini case study as to how the product's being used. So essentially, we've got this tool with a client who are using it in oncology. As you know, it's a very busy space, lots of products, lots of indications, lots of new products coming on stream. So they use it to bring together a constellation of all of the information, the key management information they want, and flows of information into one discrete place. It's not only capturing external data, things like biomed tracker, pipeline information, things of that nature, and sales information on competitors. It's also bringing forward onto here some of the bespoke and customized information that the business, the end user, generates. They want to bring onto the platform, and it's shared around on an ad hoc basis at certain points within their planning calendar. So in this case, because there's such an intensive amount of data in here, there's something like 1,000+ different types of data in here. There's 20 different visualizations that they've requested. All of this stuff is very bespoke to each client need. So if someone else approached us in a different organization, you wouldn't end up with this solution. There'd be another outcome, as it were. So essentially, as I said, this specific case, we have all the data flowing in, users downstream, and then clearly in this case there needs to be, because there is a lot of input to we have some subject matter experts cleaning, helping with the data to make sure high quality data gets through, and that's quite an investment of time. What this does though, you reduce the inefficiencies downstream by investing upstream. That's the way I would think about this, having spoken to the client. So essentially those dynamics are different for every organization as we go through into these sort of tools. So that's really a very brief example of the tool, and what we're going to have some Q&A at the end. We can talk about practically how it's working and answer any questions. But at this point, I just turn over to my colleague, Hussein, who will take you through Dynamics Tracker.
Thanks very much, Steve. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here talking to you all. So my name is Hussein, and I'm going to run you through a couple more of the tools that we've developed at Lifescience Dynamics in-house, and which I had a bit of a hand in helping to develop. So the first of these tools, as you can see, is called Dynamics Tracker, and this was basically a tool that we developed in response to a problem that we had internally in the company, which was the amount of time it was taking us in our CI monitoring of clinical trials and changes to those clinical trials. So as many of you will know, monitoring of clinical trials and changes to clinical trials, particularly in very large disease indications or disease indications that have a lot going on in them, is a really time-intensive process, a very resource-intensive process. So we developed this tool called Dynamics Tracker, which essentially allows us to monitor hundreds or even thousands of clinical trials in real time and present that information in an organized, easy-to-view online dashboard, both for us and for clients. And so the way it works is essentially Dynamics Tracker is pulling information directly from registries, clinical trial registries like clinicaltrials.gov, via APIs and putting it into this organized dashboard. But it's not only pulling the current information from those clinical trials. Once those trials are in the dashboard, it's constantly monitoring for any more changes that occur and updating the dashboard automatically with those changes. And on top of that, you don't only see those changes within the dashboard itself, but you also see email notifications for specific trials that you might be interested in. Of course, you know, when we're talking about hundreds or thousands of trials, you don't necessarily want updates for every single thing that's going on. So you can set it so that it gives you specific email updates in real time for changes that occur to particular trials of interest that are, you know, of very high importance to you. And on top of that, the tool can also automatically update itself. So you can give it a predefined list of keywords, which could include things like a disease name, an indication, a company name or a drug name, whatever it might be. And the tool will periodically check these registries for any new trials that have been added and put them into the dashboard for you to see and let you know that that's actually happened. So it basically takes what was once a extremely manual process of going into these registries, searching for trials, downloading the relevant information or copying and pasting the relevant information into an Excel automates the vast majority of it. Now, as Steve has mentioned, with all of these tools, it's an ongoing process to develop them and bring them further forward. And we do have to recognize that there's always going to be inherent limitations. In this example, we're pulling information from clinical trial registries, but, those registries don't necessarily have information that are in, for example, company PRs or earnings calls or things like that. So you'll always need to use these tools in collaboration with the CI team. The CI team will always need to be there in order to sense check everything, in order to make sure that everything that's being fed into the tool is actually relevant to the client. But overall, we're saving a huge amount of time with these tools. And just to give you one example, in this case, we had a project which had 3 sub-indications within that project. And so we set up 3 trial trackers using Dynamics Tracker for that project, each of which had about 100 trials in each tracker. And so far, that's been saving that particular project team about 39 manual hours per year that they otherwise would be spending doing this very resource-intensive, monotonous work. And so, as you can imagine, over the course of multiple projects across multiple teams, this is saving, a huge amount of time for our teams internally, but also for our clients. So that's one example. That's Dynamics Tracker. Moving on to the last tool that we want to talk about today, which is Dynamics Planner. And as he's mentioned, this is one of our tools that we developed, again, in-house in order to resolve another problem that we were having, which was with regards to conference coverage. So, again, as many of you will know, a big part of CI work is covering conferences. And as part of that coverage, our clients typically expect to get a conference planner. A conference planner is a big Excel that contains all the posters or sessions or titles that might be relevant for them for a given conference. And they typically expect to get that planner, in a very short turnaround time, maybe 1 to 2 days after that information is actually publicly available. So, for small conferences, this can be okay to do, but for larger conferences like ASCO or ESMO or ASH, this is really, a very time-intensive process. You're talking about thousands upon thousands of posters and sessions and titles and so on, which need to be gone through and need to be filtered and need to be put into an Excel and formatted and so on. And so we developed this Dynamics Planner tool, which essentially it's a 2-step tool, right? So in the first step, what we do is we carry out web scraping of the conference website. So when the relevant abstracts or posters or whatever might be are actually released publicly, we carry out this web scraping, we download all of that information offline. And then the second step, which is really the crucial step that saves us a lot of time, is we'll have developed, as part of the CI team's work, a list of keywords that they can then use to automatically filter all of those posters and titles and sessions so that they're extremely relevant and specific to a particular client's needs. And then on top of that, the tool also will format all of these sessions and titles and posters into a standardized Excel format. So it's basically ready to go, ready to be sent to the client as soon as a member of the CI team does a sense check and make sure that everything is okay. And again, similar to Dynamics Tracker, this saves us a massive amount of time. We've only started really using this tool in the past few months in our organization, but over the course of a year, for the dozens of conferences that we typically cover, again, we're expecting this to save us hundreds of hours of manual time that would otherwise be spent, creating these planners. And I want to emphasize here as well that this isn't just a lot of hours that would be spread across a long period of time. Like I mentioned, these are hours that have to be concentrated into 1 or 2 days, which means that those project teams or those analysts are stuck doing that and nothing else essentially for that period of time. So it really frees up precious hours for those particular project teams. And so that's the last tool that I wanted to talk about today, but just to go through a few key takeaways that I'd like to touch on from this talk. I think, for anyone developing tools such as this, the first step is always to identify what is the problem that we're trying to fix. And when it comes to automation and when it comes to developing tools like this, those are usually problems which are, one, very resource intensive, and two, very manual, monotonous, routine sort of work. And the goal is, of course, to automate. We want to automate as much as possible those types of tasks so that we free up our analysts and our colleagues to do the real work that they're there to do, which is, to give real valuable insights to our clients. We don't want them spending time pulling together information, formatting information, et cetera, et cetera. And it's important, as I mentioned, when you're developing tools such as this, to recognize, as we talked about, some of the inherent limitations that go hand in hand with developing tools such as this. These tools are never going to fully replace a CI team. They're going to be there to supplement that team. And you're always going to need someone there to ensure that everything is up to spec, ensure that everything is being delivered the way you expected it to be delivered. So you have to keep that in mind when you're developing these tools. And as part of that, I think it's also very important to develop practical rules and common standards for when you're developing these tools, so that you can align the expectations between internal teams, between client teams, on what they expect to get from these tools and in what format they expect to get it, and so on. And then lastly, I think a key point that I want to end with is to say that this is an ongoing process, and you need to allow for a period of adjustment when you're developing tools like this. Even when the tool is ready to be used, there's going to be a constant cycle of feedback from your internal teams, from clients. And it's very important when you develop these tools to have that feedback process in place from the very beginning, so that you're continually getting the feedback from internal teams, from clients, that allows you to bring that back in, internalize that bit in, and develop the tool in the direction that it needs to be developed. The worst thing you can do is to run off in one direction and develop something that you think someone wants, and then realize at the end of it that no one actually needed this or wanted this. So that feedback process is really very important to that. And so with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
If we can squeeze on, because otherwise we're in the way of the... It's a trap door there. They've deliberately designed it such you can't go that way, you can't go this way. Okay.
Really, really nice presentation. Very nice street. I'm interested to know, so with the Dynamics viewer and the Dynamics track, different kind of data bases, do they actually link together?
Not at the moment, but we do have a plan in place for that, because it would make sense, right, to have one feed into the other and have that sort of cyclical process. And with all of these tools as well, we have other tools that we haven't talked about today that we use internally. And that's the other thing, that these tools have a lot of synergy between one another, and it doesn't really make sense to sort of silo them off into just one field or one space, and use them collaboratively if you can.
Next question I've got is, so obviously it's clear why we're doing this. This is an efficiency gain, so actually sometimes a really important message, I think, especially when people efficiency and accuracy. We come into that. Yeah. So and again, it's a way of refining the data, correcting it, normalizing it. And do you have capacity then to also add sort of qualitative information as well into this data, so analyst commentary, feedback, insights, that sort of thing? Because that's a really valuable piece on top of this really solid foundation.
Yes, I mean, in terms of Dynamics View, it's very versatile, and you can put qualitative information and quantitative to give more of a holistic picture of particular disease areas and or competitors, definitely. So it's ultimately a very bespoke tool.
Finally, how you handle ontologies.
How do we... Ontology.
Normalization of different terms for the same thing from different places.
Yeah. So I think that's part of what I touched on at the end with one of the points I was talking about, with aligning on the rules and the standardizations with these tools. So whenever we launch a project that uses one of these tools, we always make sure to have a sort of meeting with the client to ensure that we understand what the assumptions are, we understand what the terminology are, the ontologies are, and have that in place from the beginning so that there's no confusion.
Yeah, and obviously within data sets you've got confusion of incorrect allocations and all of that stuff. So you always need someone there with an expert, subject matter expert, usually to sit behind that. But as I said, you have to do it at some point, whether you do it at the front end of the process or the back end. It's usually better at the front end if it's designed in. And rather than duplicating effort through the organization, through a multi-user situation.
Could I actually use these tools sitting in a meeting, for example, in a management meeting, where we discuss a project, a development project, where we discuss CI? Could I actually have my iPad with me and then some things to look things up and easily find them? Okay, so it's on demand. I can
I think it's like any tool that there will be a set of objectives for the tool as to what it can do, what it can't do. It will never be an all singing, all dancing system like anything. There'll be trade-offs with it. But if you know what you need, and we design it that way, and we structure the tool in that circumstance, then yes, that's what you'd be able to do.
I don't need an expert or to become an expert.
It's very interesting.
No.
The whole point is to make what would otherwise be complex data into something that anyone can look at and understand.
Any other questions before cocktails?
Thank you again for a really great presentation, a great end to the day. I guess we'll be all heading off to the exhibition hall now.
And by the way,
Yes.
Lifescience Dynamics is sponsoring the cocktail this evening.
Yeah, just mentioned that at the start, so create a rock your own back, get through this quickly.
But they're only non-alcoholic. I hope that's okay for everybody.
But thank you very much for a great end to the day. Let's say thank you to the
Thank you. Thank you.